There are countless games out there about knights, but surprisingly, very few ask what being a knight actually means. Is it the armor, the sword, the noble bloodline, or is it something far less tangible? Courage, loyalty, compassion, and the willingness to stand against overwhelming odds for someone that you love. 1348 Ex Voto spends much of its runtime wrestling with that question rather than delivering another power fantasy about legendary warriors conquering kingdoms. Sedlio's debut tells a far more intimate story. It's one about grief, devotion, and perseverance during one of the darkest periods in European history. It isn't a flawless experience. In fact, it's rough around almost every freaking edge imaginable. Combat lacks refinement. Animations frequently portray the game's modest budget, and the ending leaves more questions than satisfying answers. Yet, despite all of these shortcomings, I found myself appreciating what 1348 Ex Voto is trying to accomplish far more than I initially expected. Sometimes passion really does shine through the cracks. Set in medieval Tuscany during the devastation of the Black Death, 1348 Ex Voto follows Aita, the daughter of a minor noble family whose life has already been shattered by the plague. Having lost both of her parents, she's left with little except the swordsmanship her father taught her and Bianca. Bianca comes from the opposite end of society. Raised in poverty and facing a future inside a convent, she becomes Aita's closest companion. Their relationship immediately feels genuine, beginning not with grand declarations, but with a playful sparring session and a forest clearing that naturally doubles as the game's tutorial. It's a simple introduction, but a very, very effective one. Then everything falls apart. Bandits descend upon the village, slaughtering anyone unfortunate enough to stand in their way. Aita fights desperately through the chaos, but she's too late. Bianca has been abducted, setting off a journey across a plague-ridden Italy in pursuit of the people responsible. It's a straightforward premise, but an emotionally effective one. Rather than constantly escalating into increasingly ridiculous stakes, 1348 Ex Voto keeps its focus remarkably personal. Saving kingdoms isn't the objective, finding this one person is. The smaller emotional scope gives the adventure an identity much bigger budget RPGs often lack. If there's one area where Sedlio constantly impresses, it is the world itself. Like, this is probably one of the most beautiful games I've ever played. The game paints medieval Tuscany with obvious affection, taking players through abandoned villages, ancient Roman ruins, dense forests, luxury villas, monasteries, and war-torn settlements. Every chapter introduces another slice of 14th century Italy, and while technical limitations are impossible to ignore, the artistic direction frequently elevates the presentation. The environments possess a quiet melancholy. Entire villages stand abandoned. Roads are littered with the remains of plague and conflict. Civilization feels like it's hanging on by a mere thread. Ironically, the biggest issue isn't that these locations look bad. Honestly, they are beautiful. They look surprisingly beautiful. But they're often too beautiful. Many buildings appear almost freshly constructed, stone pathways are spotless, villas feel closer to luxury estates than medieval homes weathered by disease, warfare, and centuries of use. I think, like, maybe just a little more dirt, more decay, a little more visual exhaustion, especially because of the time period we're in. These small environmental imperfections would have dramatically strengthened immersion. But still, the overall atmosphere remains one of the game's greatest achievements, honestly. One of the most beautiful games I've ever played. Now, Aita immediately works as a protagonist because her motivations never become unnecessarily complicated. She's driven by loss, by love, by guilt, by determination, and that honestly is enough. Her performance, delivered by Abby Baldwin, gives genuine emotional weight to the character, particularly during quieter moments when dialogue does the heavy lifting instead of lengthy exposition. The supporting cast, meanwhile, exists largely to move the narrative forward rather than develop into memorable personalities themselves, which is quite unfortunate because the setting offers plenty of opportunities to explore the societal collapse brought on by the plague, religious extremists, and class divisions. Instead, the characters arrive, serve the narrative's purpose, and disappear. It keeps the pacing moving, but also leaves the world feeling less populated than it really could have, which is kind of unfortunate. Another unfortunate thing is gameplay is where 1348 Ex Voto begins showing its budget more clearly. Combat revolves around a familiar stamina-based system, including blocking, dodging, parrying, and carefully managing enemy openings. Honestly, if I had to liken it to anything, it feels very close to For Honor, but just not as refined. Aita can swap between two combat styles throughout the adventure, though. The mechanic ultimately feels underutilized outside of a handful of situations. There's rarely a compelling reason to experiment, and there's not much to experiment with. None of this is broken, it's simply Basic. Enemy encounters follow recognizable patterns. Most opponents politely wait their turn before attacking, making larger battles feel strangely orderly despite the overwhelming numbers standing around you. The illusion occasionally breaks completely when enemies suddenly materialize behind the player, exposing the encounter design rather than creating genuine tension. Animations don't always connect naturally, sword strikes sometimes lack satisfying impact, movement can feel stiff, and sometimes my sword will just fly up into the air or look 10 feet tall. It does some weird stuff. Yet, despite all these criticisms, combat rarely becomes frustrating. It's functional, entertaining enough. It carries the experience from one story beat to the next without overstaying its welcome. That's hardly glowing praise, but it also isn't insignificant. Plenty of games with considerable larger budgets fail to clear that bar, so I'm happy to say that 1348 Ex Voto does. Its only problem is being a little bit too basic. And fortunately, combat isn't the entire experience. Exploration regularly breaks up encounters through light environmental puzzles and optional upgrades hidden throughout each chapter. Players will move carts, climb ruined architecture, leap across platforms, and search for collectibles that permanently improve Aita's abilities. These moments are relatively simple, but they are important. Without them, the game's repetitive combat would become exhausting far more quickly. Instead, exploration becomes a healthier rhythm, encouraging players to slow down, absorb the environment while rewarding curiosity with meaningful progression. For most of its runtime, and it's not a long runtime, 1348 Ex Voto tells an engaging, focused narrative. It doesn't rely on shocking twists most of the time. It doesn't attempt to reinvent medieval storytelling. It simply follows Aita's increasingly desperate search through a world falling apart around her. That restraint works until we get to the ending. Without venturing into spoiler territory, the conclusion introduces developments that feel difficult to reconcile with everything the player has witnessed. The ambiguity appears intentional, inviting interpretation rather than offering any definitive answers. Some players enjoy endings that provoke discussion. A lot of the time, I'm one of them. I really like something left ambiguous, and it gives me a chance to hang out with my friends and figure out exactly what happened if they interpreted the ending differently than I did. It can create really good conversation. But personally, this one felt less thought-provoking than incomplete. The story simply stops. Rather than delivering emotional closure, it leaves behind lingering uncertainty that undermines much of the journey leading there. And it's easily the game's biggest disappointment. One phrase that kept entering my mind the entire experience was, if only they had a little bit more time. If only they could have cooked a little bit more. There's something good here. I'm starting to get it. Or perhaps if only they had a little bit more money. Because 1348 Ex Voto constantly feels one layer of polish away from becoming something genuinely special. The opening cinematic immediately reveals animation issues. Facial expressions remain fairly stiff. Music, while serviceable, rarely leaves much of an impression, and after a while can feel rather repetitive. Even smaller decisions, like English dialogue randomly inserting untranslated Italian words, such as brigante, despite perfectly good English equivalents, create moments that feel unintentionally awkward rather than authentic. Feels almost like they're going for what Assassin's Creed did, but just not as smooth. The absence of Italian voice acting also feels like a missed opportunity, especially given how deeply rooted the game is in Italian history and culture. Of course, all these decisions likely come back to budget realities rather than creative ones, and that is important to acknowledge here. It's easy to criticize rough edges. It's harder to recognize genuine ambition underneath them. 1348 Ex Voto isn't the next great medieval game. Its combat desperately lacks refinement. Its animations often betray its limited resources. Its ending stumbles when it should soar. And yet, none of these flaws erase what Sedlio clearly set out to create. Beneath every rough animation and every clunky combat encounter lies a game built with genuine affection for its setting and sincere belief in the story it's telling. Medieval Tuscany feels lovingly recreated, Aita is easy protagonist to invest in, and the smaller, more personal stakes give the narrative an emotional sincerity that many blockbuster adventures struggle to achieve. This isn't a masterpiece hidden beneath technical issues, don't get me wrong. It's a game held back by them, and strangely, almost makes it more memorable because instead of wondering what went wrong, you're left wondering what this studio might accomplish with a larger budget, more experience, and another chance. If 1348 Ex Voto is any indication, Sedlio has the passion. Now it simply needs the resources to match its ambition. 1348 Ex Voto is the kind of game that's easy to root for. If 1348 Ex Voto is any indication, Sedlio has the passion. Now it simply needs the resources to match its ambition. If you can overlook the rough edges and don't mind a fairly straightforward action adventure, you'll find a rewarding 5 to 6 hour journey that's carried more by its heart than its mechanics. It may not be unforgettable, but it is the sort of ambitious debut that leaves you excited to see what a studio with this much passion can do next. I don't know if 1348 Ex Voto is a recommendation. I don't know if I could recommend this game to somebody. I mean, for 30 bucks, you're definitely getting it's $30 here in Australia. You're definitely getting something that is, I think, maybe not a good time, but it's not a waste of time. The story, for all intents and purposes, really good. Visually, this game is gorgeous, but if you're somebody that's going in there who wants to spend their $30 on something that they can get hours and hours of enjoyment out of, you're just not going to get it from this. But if you're somebody who, for example, loves visual novels, if you're somebody that loves a story and is willing to put time into that story and just enjoy the world you're in, this game might be something you should really check out. I'm not saying you're going to walk away with it being your game of the year or go, oh my God, it's a secret masterpiece. But I think putting aside all the political bullshit, all the stories, all the lesbian night game stuff, and just going in and experiencing this game for what it is, I think you would genuinely have a really good time. So I'm not sure if I can recommend the game, but I will say this. 1348 Ex Voto is not as bad as people think it is. All right, guys, thank you so much for watching the review. I really do appreciate it. Be sure to let me know if you've played the game. Let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. If you're thinking about playing the game, let me know why you're thinking about playing the game. And be sure to head to the spreadsheet in the comments. That's where I keep a list of all the games that I'm working on for review, as well as where you guys can suggest games. Suggest them down in the comments. We'll add them to the spreadsheet. I really want to build this channel around like games you guys want to see. So be sure to let me know what you want to see. But yeah, that is going to do it from me. Thank you so much, guys, for watching. I really do appreciate it. Please remember to like and subscribe. It costs nothing and makes me feel good and really helps. So until next time, may all your games be good ones, and I will catch you guys in the next video. All right, bye, everybody.